Good evening. I'm Doug Mitchell. I'm the president of County Virginia Amateur Radio Club and 4HDF. We had to modify tonight's presentation a little bit to do some family things. So, we still got a presentation. We have a pile of people to vote in. So I'll turn it over to TJ. We'll go through all of that and we'll get to the presentation.
Yeah, so welcome to the April meeting. We're going to get this out of the way, and like Doug alluded to, Sean couldn't be here tonight due to personal situations, so we're going to have a presentation on digital voice modes tonight, and then next month we'll do the HF portable operations. So to kick it off, I wanted to show you the agenda. Obviously, we're going to get some things out of the way today, vote some new members in. The technical corner, Doug's going to help us out with talking about some unlicensed or some frequencies you can use when you're not licensed or your family or whatever. And then we'll get into the digital voice modes presentation. Quick reminder, field day is May 16th, 12 p.m. at Hanover Wayside Park. It's going to be a really fun event. We're going to have some radio set up to get on HF, VHF, and UHF. We'll have food. There's going to be a sign-up sheet we will kick around at the end of tonight, and then also I'll send out an electronic version of it so you guys can sign up if you wish to bring any kind of food, condiments, utensils, etc. So save the date, May 16th, 12 p.m., Hanover Wayside Park. It's also on the Facebook page if you forget like me, and it's on the website. It's everywhere. So, new members. It looks like we've got several new faces in the room. We've got 18 to vote on. What I'll do is I will call out your name. If you're here, stand up, do a twirl, do a dance, whatever. We'll raise our hands if we're in favor, which everybody probably will be, and then we will go ahead and move on. So I'm going to get the associate members out of the way first. Edward Tully, are you in the house? All right. Everybody in favor of Edward? Perfect. Landon, are you here? All right, everybody in favor of Landon? All right. Kyle Clinton, is Kyle here? All right. All in favor? Brian Colombo. All right. Welcome, Brian. Thanks for coming out. William Gwaltney, are you here? All right. Everybody in favor of William? Stephen Skelton, are you here? All right. Everybody in favor? All right. Donald Shiro, are you here? All right. Everybody in favor? Thomas Doyle. John Barrett. All right. All in favor? Mike Williams. Richard Cooper. Myron Sampson. All right. Scott Corsano. All right. Welcome, Scott. Thanks for coming out. Andrew Farnsworth. All in favor? Josh Cease. All right. Welcome, Josh. Warren Camp. All right. James Larry. And Justin Smith. All right. Perfect. Welcome to the club. That brings us up to a grand total of 145 members. So I'm going to invite Doug up to see, we'll just do a quick little highlight of some frequencies that are available out there for our technical corner if you are not licensed. And yeah, go ahead and take it away, Doug.
All right, so I know everybody knows about the amateur radio stuff, but there's also things available for families and you to communicate. It's all license free. One you may be most familiar with is FRS, is Family Radio Service. It's limited to half a watt and 2 watts depending on what frequency you're using. But it's open to anybody, as long as it's used lawfully. The way that the rules are written. It's licensed by law. The FRS stuff is in between the regular GMRs channels. GMRs channels are spaced at 25 kilohertz. These are spaced at 12.5 kilohertz, so you get in between. Another thing you may not know is MURS. It's kind of basically the VHF version of FRS. It operates on 5 frequencies in a 151 megahertz and 154 megahertz band. Same deal out there. It's all narrowband stuff. No license required. FMs, and there's a few other. There's 1 or 2 digital modes basically for telemetry, like a driveway monitor. You may have seen driveway monitor where you put something out the driveway. If somebody comes in, it sets off an alarm. That's generally on MUS frequency. But the radios for that aren't as, you can, they're basically rather, you find them better on Amazon. There's not any place that's stocking that much anymore. And then lastly, the CB radio. CB radio is still a thing. There's a lot of people still like to shoot skip on it and that sort of stuff. And now as the sun cycle is going back out, it'll be a lot more friendly because you don't have so much stuff from around the world getting into it. So that's still a thing and still really popular with four-wheelers and you know, caravanners too. If you have a couple of campers that are going, you know, somewhere, you know, they can use that to talk back and forth. It's a little bit easier to pick the mic up than it is to grab a handheld and you can hear a little bit better. So that's the beyond your license part of it. Those of you that have the GMRs, if you're interested, one of our members, Curtis, from Heights, he put up a repeater on the 725 pair, 462-725. And he's got it open to everybody that's downtown. It has a pretty decent footprint, so if you haven't heard it, you can program it in and just pop over and see what's going on. So,
Would that reach out this way or no? Too far?
Say that again?
Would it reach out this way?
Probably will.
Yeah.
Handheld, maybe not, but mobile it will.
Is that the capital?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Capital service.
It's hard to repeat.
What was that frequency again, sir?
The output on it is 462, 725. I believe it's a 118.8 CTCSS code. Any questions?
What are guys using for power output on CD these days?
That's a loaded question, Bill.
Depends on how many
Well,
The legal answer and the not legal answer.
If you throw out a
I
number,
will say,
yes.
if you see a van with a PVC tube
Yeah.
on the roof and some verticals on it, don't stand in front of it. Yes,
What is power limitation for MURS?
say that again.
What is the power limitation for
Oh, I'm
MURS?
sorry. That's 2 watts.
2 watts.
Yep, all 5 channels, 2 watts each. Mike, who would know?
Definitely not me.
Okay, thank you.
All right. With that, I'll invite PJ up here. We are going to get into an introduction to
He does live.
I exist.
Now, what's really funny is this is a 2.0 of this presentation. So we, funny enough, gave this presentation a somewhat different version of it last year on April 9th. So we're 364 days.
364 days ago, and we had a lot of requests for us to do a presentation again, but we don't care. We're going to do one anyway.
So let's get right into it. So we're going to talk about digital voice modes, introduce everybody to digital voice modes. So first we'll get off with an introduction. So I'll send it over to PJ and he'll tell you a little bit about himself.
Yeah, so my name's PJ. For those that don't know me, Kilo Oscar 4, Romeo Mike Victor. Got my license in 21. Well, wow.
Told you I upgraded it.
That's pretty cool. Prior to being an amateur radio, I'd spent some time in the public safety sector, so I know and used one of these things as a lifeline for 10 plus years. And then outside of that, my first ham contact was a DMR contact, so I bought a B-Tech radio. At the time, there was a Brandmeister repeater in Richmond, I think, and tuned that bad boy up and made a contact, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever. So, and then met Doug and decided I'd like DMR so much and wanted a Motorola radio, and now I work for Motorola, so I blame that on Doug. So.
This is all Doug's fault. I'm TJ, KN1ONE. As my day job, I do some public safety communication stuff. I really enjoy the P25 digital voice mode, which we'll get into, and software-defined radio. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do with SDR that a lot of people don't realize, and mission-critical communications in general. And here's a fun picture of me at work teaching a dog how to work the fire radio. So thought that would be a fun picture. So let's get into the table of contents. So the first couple of things, or the few things we'll cover in tonight's presentation. Number one, what is a digital voice mode? Why does it exist? What are the benefits and downsides? We will go over some common digital voice modes, myths and misconceptions, which are the funnest part, and then how to get started with digital voice. So let's get started with what is a digital voice mode. PJ, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll probably just read off the slide though. So a digital voice, we're going to compare analog and digital. So let's say a cassette tape is going to be your analog and your MP3 player is going to be your digital. And so what that basically means is instead of just, hey, we're talking, now what we're doing is we're putting it over the radio, we're changing it to numbers and all that stuff, and then we're outputting it as digital. And what that does is it makes the signal more clear and easier to read for people that are listening to you.
Yeah, so analog, as we all know, is a continuous waveform.
I didn't know that was.
So it's susceptible to static noise, and it's a gradual fade of audio as your signal degrades. So as you get further away from the 511 or the 543, it's going to get choppier, and the white noise is going to increase, and eventually it's going to be unintelligible. With digital, because it is ones and zeros at the very basic level, when you have it, for the most part, you either have it or you don't. There's a very, very short part of your range of signal where it's going to sound like R2D2, and then it's going to cut out. But for the most part, you either have digital or you don't. There's no static, there's no anything like that, no white noise. And because it is a constant carrier, and this, like sideband, as you talk, your power changes because it's amplitude modulation. With digital, your output is consistent. It's a consistent waveform, so you are less susceptible to noise compared to something like sideband or even FM in some conditions. So I'm going to play you, here's a difference in the waveforms, and then I'm going to play you, obviously we've all heard analog, and here's the mayor of the 511.
Yeah, I'm doing good. Just piddling around, cut grass, doing odds and ends inside now, watching television. So I think it's your off today.
Yep, that's the mayor of the 511 on analog, and here is just a sample from DMR VA a year or so ago.
They're all linked together. The Richmond one, Powhatan, New Kent, I think, and the Petersburg, and there may be one others that I'm not familiar.
So you can hear the difference. You can hear some white noise in the analog signal. It's not a bad signal by any stretch of the imagination, but there is white noise in it that is noticeable. With the digital, it's just his voice. There's no, if he had a dog barking in the background or a really loud engine running, yeah, you'd probably hear that. But as far as the actual signal goes in the environment, you don't hear any of the contaminants to the RF spectrum with digital. So we'll go over some pros and cons because, like anything else, there are benefits and downsides to digital voice. So PJ, take us away with the benefits.
All right, so yeah, some of the benefits are we are crystal clear audio. So as you heard, it definitely sounds different, right? It can sound, I don't know, muffled maybe, but it's definitely easier to read in my opinion. I don't think DMR is definitely the best voice example for digital. It doesn't have the best output, but it is crystal clear. You can also have multiple talk paths on one frequency. So I think that's what really blew my mind when I started with DMR is basically, and just to put it in layman's terms, you have one frequency and somebody can talk on one side of the frequency and another person on the other side of the frequency. And it's just, it expands your bandwidth for one frequency. Almost, if you start talking about trunking, almost unlimitedly, right? Mm-hmm. Which is really neat. And then you also have your GPS, your radio IDs, and other kind of built in. So a good example here, so we have some Motorola radios here, but like this is a ICOM radio. Yeah, ICOM radio. It's a DSTAR radio. It's got GPS built into it. And so what I can do is I can turn it on, look for the location of the closest repeaters based off the GPS in that radio. And then, of course, you have your radio IDs, which is a little bit more unique than on your analog side. So on analog, when somebody keys up, unless you kind of fox hunt them, it's hard to tell where they are or who they are. But with DMR and pretty much every digital mode, you have to have an ID. And what that ID does is basically tells the other person, oh, hey, this is KO4 RMV talking to me right now, which is something that's very unique and very helpful.
And one of the last benefits there is that it's significantly easier to network. And what I mean by network is if I wanted to link the 511 with another repeater, I would have to take the demodulated analog voice, pass it through the internet to the other repeater who's then going to retransmit it and remodulate it. And so you have a slight, I'll get to you in just a second, you have a slight degrade in signal, slight, but if you do that over several paths, you kind of lose signal quality over time. Dave, what was your question?
I'm getting a radio ID. When you go to radioid.com and get a radio ID, is that good for all the forms of digital, or does each form require their own radio ID?
Great question. So ICOM and Yaesu, they just use your call sign. But the digital ID is good for P25 and DMR. So you can use both the IDs for both systems. Great question.
And that's, I don't know, that's something that we cover in this presentation. So that was, thank you for
Yeah,
bringing that up.
very good question. Yeah.
Just to recap what Dave asked, he asked if when you go on the website called radioid.net, and it's basically the default location for getting an ID to broadcast across DMR P25 that tells people who you are. Yep. So that one ID, you can look it up on radioid.net. It's like looking up a call sign on QRZ, and it'll pull up who you are. Great question. Thanks for bringing that up.
Just a follow-up on that, so that number would have to be entered into your DMR radio? It's going to be even able to transmit?
That's right, yeah.
Well,
not necessarily that number, but a number
Yes.
needs to be in. Unless you simplex, I don't guess.
yeah, no, you don't have to. on
simplex, you
simplex.
won't have to. But to be let into like the Brandmeister network, you're going to have a valid radio ID. And in theory, it would be your radio ID. So.
I have a radio ID, and it's probably why I can't transmit though, because I didn't put it in the radio.
Yes.
Let's talk about that offline.
If your radio ID is arbitrary, it's something you made up, you'll still access the DMR repeaters, but it won't be sent out to Richmond anywhere else. If you were
It
using-
cross-references you then.
Right, if you were using a hotspot, where you told your hotspot to send your voice to, it wouldn't recognize it at all.
And so with DMR VA, if it's not a valid ID, you can talk locally on the repeater, but it won't be connected to the other ones. Is that right? Okay. All right. Yes, sir.
I'm misunderstanding, did you say that was defunct now?
No, I might have misspoken. It's like the default, it's like QRZ, but for digital.
It's like
radio IDs.
officially unofficial.
Yeah, it's like, like everybody goes to this spot, but it's not the rule, it's just kind of what everybody does.
It's pretty much a rule.
Yeah.
Most networks require you, like the hotspot, the Brandmeister, et cetera, require you to register with that. All right, well, some of the drawbacks of digital, because like anything else, there are drawbacks. Not all modes are interoperable. So folks who have gotten digital radios know that PJ's ICOM radio can't talk to his Yaesu radio, and his Yaesu radio can't talk to his Motorola radio, and his Motorola radio can't talk to his ICOM radio, because they all have different types of digital.
But TJ, if I was to change these to analog, could they all talk?
Yes. So the lowest common denominator for radio in general is analog FM. So for the most part, some radios excluded, but for the most part, every radio can transmit in FM on analog. So PJ could tune up 14652 on all four of those radios, and they can all talk to each other. In addition to them not all being interoperable in a digital operation, the learning curve is like anything else. It's there, just like HF with learning how to tune an antenna, how to read SWR, whatever. There is a learning curve with learning the terminology and how to program all these different radios and modes. And then on top of that, like we kind of said earlier, you either have the signal or you don't. There's limited adjustments that can be made within the radio to decode a weak signal. So outside of adjusting your antenna, pointing your antenna in a different direction if it's directional, there's really nothing within the radio you can do to increase your chances of hearing a weak signal. And because they are not plain analog, a lot of them are new within the last 10, 15 years, so the cost of entry to get a digital radio can be more expensive, although most amateur radios like the ICOM ID50, et cetera, are already $600. So,
And I think since last year when we did this presentation, that's actually changed because the Baofeng has come out with a DMR radio that I think a lot of you guys have. So it's even more affordable now than it's ever been.
Correct. So let's talk about the most common digital voice modes in ham radio. So PJ, let's start off with your favorite.
Yeah, let's start with DMR. So before I get started, so last year when we did this presentation, Peter Martin was sitting right there, and Peter Martin is now a silent key, but this was the first time I had ever met him, and he had a lot to do with the DMR VA system in Virginia. So I just think it's good that I mentioned his name because he is a silent key, so I just want to keep him in our memories. So I just wanted to touch on that before I got going. So DMR is definitely the most popular digital voice mode, and I think that just comes from it's not proprietary. So you can get a Baofeng radio, you can get an Anytone radio, you can get a Motorola radio, you can get a BTEC radio, you can probably get a TID radio. There's so many options out there that allow you to do DMR. Now, when DMR was first invented, if you will, it was created by Motorola to kind of sell to the business side and to schools and stuff like that. But as we do as amateur operators, we found a way to hack it and make it our own. And so now it's no longer proprietary. It's more of a protocol, I guess?
Yeah, standard.
Yeah, it's more of a standard now. So the great thing about, is that it?
Yeah, I mean, that's for
Okay.
DMR.
All right.
You
I
can
just
keep on
wanted,
going.
yeah. So the great thing to me about DMR is you have several networks, TGIF and Brandmeister. To me, I think the most popular right now is Brandmeister. We can agree or disagree on that, but what's really neat about that is I can connect my DMR radio if there's a DMR repeater here that has Brandmeister, and I can talk anywhere on the world. And when we used to have a repeater here in Richmond that was connected to Brandmeister, I'd be driving down the road on my HT, at the time it was a BTEC, and I could talk to people in Australia. And for somebody that had no experience with HF, that was the coolest thing in the world to me. So that's kind of why I love DMR. Most importantly, the DMR system that we have in Virginia, I think covers over 80%, if not more, of the state. So if you have a DMR radio and you're anywhere in the state, likely going to hit a DMR repeater that we have set up, not we, but amateurs have set up in this state. So when we're even doing some things where Skywarn is hosting a lot of their nets, when they have one, on DMR. And because of that, because of the footprint that it has, and you can talk on the Virginia statewide net or repeater here, and you can hear the guy on the statewide channel in Roanoke. Very unique, very awesome, especially for amateurs to have access to basically a commercial standard like that. I really just think it's really good.
Yeah. Next, we'll go to System Fusion, which is, PJ mentioned that that DMR is a standard. What that means, like he described, is his Motorola DMR radio can talk to his Anytone DMR radio and any other DMR radio that exists. Well, Yaesu's System Fusion can only talk to other Yaesu radios that have System Fusion in them. So you cannot, a Motorola DMR radio and a Yaesu System Fusion radio cannot talk to each other. However, because it was developed for amateur radio, there are some upsides to that. Number one is your call sign. Once you type your call sign into the radio, it gets transmitted with your voice. So when somebody else is receiving it, it displays KO4RMV is talking to me or KN10NE is talking to me. On top of that, it uses 25 kilohertz bandwidth because it's an amateur radio. So the voice quality compared to something like DMR that's 12.5 kilohertz has more fidelity, I guess is the right word for it. It sounds better. DMR doesn't sound bad by any stretch of the imagination, but there is a difference in audio quality because DMR is a bit more compressed. So similar to System Fusion is DSTAR, made by ICOM. So only Kenwood and ICOM amateur radios can talk on DSTAR. And PJ, I'll let you kind of go into some further on DSTAR.
I mean, I thought you had it, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll continue it. So ICOM, again, same thing. It's proprietary to ICOM and Kenwood radios. So, there are a couple exceptions, but for the most part, you can't talk on a reflector unless you have an ICOM or Kenwood radio. Again, there are some exceptions to that. I think Bob has a tool that will allow you to do that. But for the most part, that's it. There aren't as many ICOM DSTAR repeaters, but touching back on Yaesu, there's actually a few more from the amateur community, a few more Yaesu repeaters where you can actually access the network without having internet, right? We can just, as long as the repeater's there, you can talk to it. And then a lot of the local repeaters are, what is it called, where you can talk into it digitally, but it comes out? You know what I'm talking about, though? What is it? Automatic mode selection. I think the MRA is that. Yes. So the MRA, the 511, if you talk to it digitally, so if this radio is on digital and you talk to it no. If this radio is on digital and you talk to it digitally, it'll speak back to you in analog. So again, going back to Yaesu, they're a little bit more popular in the amateur community as far as repeaters. And then you have ICOM. ICOM makes a great product. But there aren't as many DSTAR repeaters out there. There is one here in Richmond. I think there's two because there's one on UHF and one on VHF. DSTAR is not my favorite just because it's kind of confusing for me, but that's just because I don't play with it enough. But it is also a really good mode for us to have as far as amateurs, to have another digital voice mode out there. It was developed in Japan, is that right? Yeah, so it was developed in Japan by the amateurs out there, and again, ICOM and Kidwood have kind of taken off with it. Yep. And then, the next one.
The next one is.
The next one's the bread and butter, right?
Many people would say this is the best. So
my paycheck would.
P25, all jokes aside, is it's a good voice mode. The audio quality, I think, is of maybe top 2 out of the group here. But it is another standardized voice mode. Like DMR, a Motorola radio can talk to a BTEC radio, can talk to an Anytone radio. A Motorola radio can talk to a Harris radio or a Kenwood radio or a Tate radio or a Bendix King radio with P25. It is a standard. We'll get more in depth with each of these modes in a little bit. DMR is coming up next. But this P25 was developed for public safety. It started, I think they launched it in the 90s, I want to say mid-90s. And the idea was, at that time, a lot of agencies were buying a Motorola proprietary system or a GE Harris proprietary system. And so, Hanover and Henrico could not talk to each other because they had different types of radios. And so P25 set out to try and correct that. So everybody, even if you bought a Harris system or a Kenwood system, everybody can talk to each other. So it is the most underutilized digital voice mode by far. You can go on the Worldwide Talk group, throw out your call 5 times in 5 minutes, and nobody will talk to you. Yeah. However, that's kind of a draw of it for me, because then me and PJ can set up in some random talk group and talk for hours, and nobody's going to be upset with us.
And nobody's going to care, which is nice.
Yeah. Exactly. So let's get into specifics about each of these voice modes, even more than we have already. So first is PJ's bread and butter, DMR.
Dang, I already talked a lot about it.
I know.
I missed the slide. All right, so apparently DMR has two time slots per frequency. Again, you can split that frequency into two, basically, again, trying to keep it simple, is 2 separate talk groups, right? So one frequency, you can have 2 channels within that frequency. Is kind of, I'm sure Doug is hating me for saying that, but that's like the best way I can explain it. It's definitely the most cost-effective digital voice mode. We talked about that. Again, a lot of you already have those Baofeng radios, which I think is great. It's gotten you out into the digital world, especially for those who haven't been able to do that because of affordability issues. We talked about this. If you're not using the DMR VA system, I highly encourage you to use it. It's a great resource that we have that's total for as much time and money has been put into that system, it's totally underutilized by amateurs. And I think if you've ever sat on that repeater, you probably agree. You don't hear much traffic over there. They built it for us to use it. So please, take advantage of it. I'd hate to see us lose that awesome resource. I mean, I would go to say this has more coverage than some of our police radios out here. So please, use it, utilize it. That would be, I don't know the frequency. I'm sure Doug does for Richmond. There you go. So, yeah, go to dmrva.org.
What was the frequency?
I believe it's 442.5875.
And the reason I don't know that is because DMR is so unique. I don't even have. I just have it as Richmond Metro or Virginia. 443 5875. I think that's what he said.
Yeah.
So yeah, get out there, use that system. There's a lot of it's kind of underutilized, and there's a lot of people that put some time into it. So please get out there and use it. Yeah, okay, so DMR definitely kicked off the hotspot game. I'm a big hotspot fan. I think they're super cool, but again, they're not for everybody. And then, yes, so another thing that people don't realize is DMR can do private calling. So if I have TJ's radio ID in this radio, I can call him directly and nobody can hear us. So it's not really encrypted per se if they know where to find us, but I can use his caller, his radio ID as a talk group, and basically it's just me and him that are talking on that talk group, and it's a private call. Yep. And it also supports texting between radios and paging. I've gotten texting to work a little bit with DMR VA. It's been a long time, but I've definitely gotten texting to work over the hotspot. So is it necessary? No, but is it cool? Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does that work in relation, like, y'all two are having a conversation on your private back and forth, you're talking on the same repeater. Somebody else wants to make a call, but that repeater's tied up with the two of you. Is that?
So it depends on how the repeater is configured. So like he mentioned, DMR has two, they're called time slots, but it's basically two halves of the frequency, and you can have slot 1 and slot 2. So if the repeater is configured to send private calls to time slot 2, let's say, in DMR VA's case, most of the talk groups are on time slot 1. Yep. So for the most part, assuming talk groups that use time slot 2 are not active, you wouldn't really interrupt it. Now, if Virginia statewide uses time slot 2 and Richmond Metro uses time slot 1. So assuming that we were on time slot 2 and somebody's trying to key up on Virginia statewide on that local repeater, it could bonk them out. But private calls are only carried on the local repeater as far as I know.
Yeah. Again, it depends on the network,
Yeah.
but here, yes. Yeah, and that would be frustrating for some people because you're getting a bonk and you don't know why. So, but you can typically it's split out between the two time slots. So yeah, good point.
All right, cool. I'll try and cover System Fusion as best as I can. It is not my bread and butter, obviously, but we'll give it a shot. So I kind of covered this before, but it's a proprietary digital mode, so only Yaesu radios can use it. Developed specifically for amateur radio. One thing I do want to point out, though, is and it's gotten better in the last year since we did this presentation, actually, but many people call Yaesu System Fusion C4FM. That is referring to the modulation. It's like calling analog FM. So while it's not wrong per se, it's not necessarily entirely correct. So C4FM stands for continuous 4-level frequency modulation. So it's basically how the radio is spitting out the ones and zeros onto the RF spectrum. Yaesu System Fusion is the proper name for the digital voice mode, but if you hear people say C4FM, this is what they're referring to. It integrates, we kind of talked about hotspots.
Yeah.
A hotspot is just a little microcomputer that has an antenna on it. So it can talk to your radio and your radio can talk to it, and it will send your radio signal through the internet to wherever you tell it to go. So Yaesu has their own version of this called Wires X, and it's basically just their own way of taking that signal from your radio and passing it through the internet. It's their own proprietary platform. The big draw to this is that they sell Yaesu repeaters have Wires X enabled by default. So you can take a Yaesu radio, assuming you configure the repeater correctly, and talk to Japan from your HT in your living room, talking through the repeater or through a hotspot, as long as the repeater is enabled for it. Wires X and the internet is not required for System Fusion. You can talk simplex with System Fusion or across a repeater from radio to radio like normal, but the Wires X is like a bonus to it. So if you wanted to talk to Japan without having to get on HF, you could do that here. Good?
And yeah, and then we have two repeaters that I know of that are kind of accessible from this location. That would be Rats has a Yaesu System Fusion repeater that has Wires X, and then the Berry Farm has a Yaesu System Fusion, and I think it's Wires X, right?
Yep.
Okay.
It's at least a, Yaesu repeater. I don't know
Okay.
if that's wired up.
Okay, all right. I believe it's Wires X. So again, if you have access to a Yaesu radio and you want to try some of the different, I think they're called rooms on Yaesu. They are called rooms. If you want to try some of the different rooms on Yaesu, try to hit the RATS repeater and go search your heart away for all thousands of rooms out there. There you go.
Thank you, Will. Yeah, and then I mentioned it before, but if you didn't catch it, your call sign, assuming you configure your radio right, is embedded in your voice. So as soon as you key up, in theory, you wouldn't really have to say your call sign. It would just be there in the digital voice mode, which is pretty cool. DSTAR. PJ, do you want to give DSTAR?
I'll give it my best.
All right.
I'll give it the old college try. So it was developed by the Japanese Amateur Radio League in 2001. It's one of the first amateur digital specific modes. Was there a question? Okay. Sorry to interrupt you. Oh, gotcha. Okay. I do know they both do DSTAR. I don't own a Kenwood, so I'm not sure. But ICOM and Kenwood are the only two manufacturers that have DSTAR in the radio. Again, it's proprietary. Nobody else is allowed to. It's copyrighted. Now, again, there are some tools that you can use on your phone. You can connect and stuff like that. But if we're talking about a physical HT or mobile radio, it has to be an ICOM or a Kenwood. Again, gonna let you do that.
Yeah. So like C4FM with System Fusion, DSTAR uses GMSK, Gaussian Minimum Shift Keying. Again, it's just how it translates your voice from the data into the radio frequency spectrum.
Same thing, user call sign is embedded into the radio itself, so when you key up, your call sign is automatically getting transported out to the person that hears you. I will say one of the cool things about this ICOM, I'm sure the Yaesu can do it, but whenever I talk to somebody on this on digital, it will literally tell me how many miles away from me they are. So it does have GPS embedded as well in that signal when it sends it out. It does allow for repeater-to-repeater communication. So basically, we could take this radio, if I went to Kansas City one time and I talked to you. So I went to Kansas City one time, I took this radio, I dialed up a local frequency and was able to talk back to Bob on the Richmond repeater because I just dialed in the Richmond repeater from this radio. So I was using a Kansas City repeater and I dialed in the Richmond repeater and was able to have a QSO here back at home. Reflector. There we go. All right. Reflector, sorry. But either way, I was able to get out and talk to Bob from a local repeater out in Kansas City. And were we using the Richmond reflector? Or you're not?
No, I think we'll have to get which one we're using now, but I don't think it was the original.
Okay. Well, what I was just talking about is a possibility as well. I could have tuned in the Richmond repeater and talked from that repeater to the repeater here. Again, internet does magic, but that's how we would do it there. Again, just talking about it, it is... Okay, yeah. DSTAR was designed for internet linking in mind. I thought it said proprietary, and then I was like, let me read it first. So again, DSTAR is a great mode, and it was kind of designed so we can have the internet link it, but you don't need the internet for it to work. You can still talk digital simplex or, digital repeater. I can talk to Bob at his house. I can talk to Doug at his house. Sorry. I can talk to Doug at his house, and I'm at my house, and we're using the repeater, but we're using it digitally, but there's no internet connecting us. So again, we're talking to each other locally on the repeater. Yes, sir? Great question. So reflectors are just talk groups or rooms. So on Yaesu System Fusion, we call them rooms. And then on here, we call them reflectors. So basically, it's just you're going into the internet and you're syncing up to a talk group, but you don't necessarily need to be connected to a repeater to talk on a reflector.
So a repeater So a reflector, what it is, it's basically like let's call this room a reflector, right? We are all in this reflector, in a talk group, reflector, room, and
Talk group, reflector,
and
room.
Those are the
Those
only
are the three. Yeah.
Those all mean the same thing. So we're all here in this reflector. Let's say all of our radios are connected to HVARC's reflector, and that's all it is. A repeater can have reflectors enabled, so you can talk to people at far distances through the internet, or it can be configured so it just repeats it to the local area like a normal repeater.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yep.
we'll at the end we'll show you the table of all the different.
It's
terms.
very, very easy to understand sometimes.
Yeah.
But there's different ways to get in a reflector, just like there's different ways to get into this room. You can walk through the door, or you can sign in online and watch the video on YouTube. So same kind of concept.
What is the 220 frequency used on the 12 to 2 net?
All star.
Yeah, that's all.
It's similar but different.
It's analog digital.
Yeah. So, like I said, if I wanted to link the 511 to another repeater, I'd just take the demodulated analog audio and just send it through the internet, and then it get rebroadcast. That's basically what it's doing. Is it's just creating a phone call between repeater A and repeater B and sending the audio back and forth. Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Very similar. Very similar. So that's DSTAR, and then everybody's favorite. Many people would say maybe the best.
Might be the best.
P25. So I kind of covered this. So this was developed by APCO. So similar to how DSTAR was created by the Japanese Amateur Radio League, a big association, P25 was created by APCO, which is the Association of Public Safety Communications Officials, which is a total mouthful. This was created, the project started in the 1990s. APCO does this thing where each big initiative they call it a project. So like, for example, training within the 911 center is Project 33 or P33. So this just happens to be the project number, and it turned into the name of the digital voice mode. The goal was to create a standard voice mode that encompassed conventional, trunking, encryption, and several other things that could be truly interoperable between different vendors. So, like I said earlier, a Motorola radio can talk to a Harris radio, Benix King radio, Tate, etc. If it's a P25 radio, it can talk to other P25 radios. P25 is deployed mainly in the United States and Australia as a public safety focused voice and data protocol. It does have some data functions as well. Kind of weird that Australia is the only other continent in the world that picks it up. Some US bases out in Europe and other locations use P25 systems, but their public safety in Europe and other places in the world use a different thing called Tetra. That's kind of weird. We covered that. So, kind of said earlier, but the idea is, like let's say in the 90s and the early 2000s, Henrico was on a Motorola proprietary system, so only Motorola radios could talk to it, and Hanover was on a GE Harris system. And so the two could not talk to each other. If I took my Harris Hanover radio into Henrico, I could not talk to Henrico, and the same conversely. And so when both agencies, we're still kind of experiencing some of these issues now, but when both agencies are on a true P25 system, everybody can talk to each other. Yeah. So my New Kent Harris radio can come into Hanover and talk on the Motorola system, and I don't know, I think King and Queen has Tate radios. They could come in and talk on a Motorola system or a Harris system. So that was
Kenwood, Nottoway has Kenwood.
So they all can talk to each other. That was the big idea behind P25. Now, this assumes that you are on the same band, right? So assuming your radio has VHF, if it's a VHF system, or UHF, so on and so forth. But the common thing is the actual voice mode, so you can all talk to each other. This was really sped up by 9/11. 9/11 showed everybody that police need to be able to talk to the fire department, and surrounding fire departments and police agencies need to talk to other police agencies. And so this kind of sped that progress up quite a bit. Even though P25 was originally introduced in the 90s, the standard is evolving all of the time. They've introduced all sorts of things. Phase 2 was a big one, and I think it came out in 2011, which is a while ago now. But Basically, it does what DMR does and allows you to have 2 conversations on one frequency. I think they're working on integrating LTE into it, so when your radio goes out of radio range, it will revert to cell service, so you can still hear everything that's going on. Motorola and Harris have their own flavors of that, but I believe APCO is working on a standard flavor, so a Motorola radio can talk to a Harris system using LTE if it needs to. So it is a very evolving standard, and it can use C4 FM or CQPSK, which is a simulcast, or, yes, sir?
So when I think of P25, I think of public safety bands.
Yes.
And I'm not licensed yet. Can you touch on how these might apply for ham radio?
Yeah, you can program 446, 1465. You can program ham frequencies with P25 radios.
Okay, so when I select a radio, is it going to limit me to just the ham bands, or do I just need to be careful?
No, you just got to be, you just put in frequencies you're licensed to use. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Is it primarily RF, or is there repeaters and internet backup that's linking with you?
So it depends on the system. That's a great question. So some systems are just repeaters. Some systems are repeaters that are linked together and transmit the same information at the same time. And some systems are trunked, which means you have a pool of frequencies, and when you key up, your radio says, hey system, I want to talk on fire dispatch, and the system says, okay, here's a frequency, and it tells all the other radios that are on fire dispatch to listen to that frequency.
But for the amateur side of things, there aren't many P25 repeaters, unfortunately. There could be, not yet. There could be some in the works. I don't know. I've heard something. Yeah. But there aren't many P25 repeaters right now. But if you're on the amateur side of it, you can have those P25 repeaters linked back to a system. Yeah, go ahead.
Is it all VHF or UHF or both?
It can be both. It depends on the radio and the repeater. Yes, sir.
I have a Uniden SDS 100 scanner.
Yep.
And one of the things when I got it came out, it said it can tune into P25 phase 1, phase 2. Are there different levels of P25?
Yeah, so phase 1 is what's called FDMA, so frequency division multiple access. So all that means, it's kind of a weird term, but basically when you key up your radio, the frequency you're using, that is the only conversation happening on that frequency with phase 1. Phase 2 allows the system to use TDMA, which means you can have 2 conversations on one frequency at a time. So that's what that means. Any other questions about P25? Yes, sir.
The Motorola, like the other ham radios, can you put the frequencies you want into it? Like if you wanted to monitor the air at 8?
No, so you
AM or railroads?
Yeah, so you can do railroads there. Usually the frequency ranges of most P25 radios are 136 megahertz to 174, 380 to 520, and 764 to 860 something. Now, it can only do, most of them can only do FM or P25. So if the railroads, for example, are FM, so you could, I've got railroad frequencies in my radio that are receive only. No, because they
Doesn't
don't
do AM. Yeah.
Good question, though.
Yeah, great question. Great question. And also to touch point as far as the amateur side of it in digital modes, would you say this is probably the most expensive to get into, or not necessarily?
An XTS 5000, a good deal on one for $200-300 is $300 cheaper than an ICOM ID50, which is a somewhat old radio now.
And the reason I say that, because you take a radio like this that's between $7,000 and $10,000, it can be a little bit hard for people. Maybe 12, 13, 14. I mean, I don't know. Anybody want to touch it?
This guy.
You take.
And with the Motorola's, can you just sit there and put your frequencies in yourself?
Yep.
Yeah.
Or do you have to have some special?
No, the feature has to be enabled in them, but you can go in and you can create a channel. It's called front panel programming, and you can go in and punch in 14458 or whatever you want to put in some of them.
Yeah.
Put in your PL tone. Put in. You can change between analog and digital. Change the name of the channel if you want. So yeah, it is possible, but like I said, for the Motorola's at least, they have to have the feature enabled. With Harris, Bendix King, and I think even Kenwood, I think it comes default. Yes, sir.
Is that going to be more for the people that use programming methods like chirp and stuff? Is that more proprietary for programming then? So like for
Yeah, so you have it's a special programming software that I can show you right now. So you open, like any chirp, you have a file saved that is what is in the radio. And so it's very different from everything else. So to create a regular ham channel, you'd create what's called a conventional personality, which basically just describes how the radio will function when that channel is pulled up. So you can define your scan list in the personality. You can define whether it's analog or digital and a lot of other things. And then, like this is the Chesapeake area. Let me go to Richmond. So you name, it's a zone, which is a bank of channels. And then you go and you create all of these channels. So like the 14652, you can set your receive PL frequency, or if you want it to be carrier squelch, your transmit and receive frequency. This looks very complicated, but after figuring it out, after you find where the places that everything lives, it's just muscle memory.
Yeah, and I'm sure all of you guys recognize these numbers, right? They're PL tones, the frequency, the offset. So I mean, it's something that we're all used to. It's just we're not used to it in this format per se.
Yeah, it's just a different format. But like I said, like anything, there's a learning curve to commercial radios. But like PJ said, it's the same information just put in different places, and sometimes it's called something a little bit different. But if I wanted to call this, instead of vCall, I could call it 146.52, and it would take that too. So you can name the channel whatever you want. Let's go back here. I think that's enough on P25. I think we've tired the room out. So
P25 more of an open
yes.
standard?
So the best way to put it for people who are also kind of computer geeks is it's open source. So if Joe Blow Company says, I want to make a P25 radio, I can go look at the standards and create a P25 radio. Now, there are some things that obviously cost money when you go to get the device certified by APCO to say, okay, this is an accepted P25 device. But for the most part, just like DMR, if Baofeng wants to make a P25 radio, they can look up the standards and make a P25 radio.
And they would I think if P25 took off. It's just not as popular, so they probably don't see the money in it yet.
Yeah, let's talk about some terms and conditions. So me and PJ got hooked up on this earlier about what these stupid terms mean. They all mean the same thing, but they're a different term depending on what radio you use. So all of these are just a digital voice group. So this is like the chat room. This is the chat room you're trying to talk to, but if it's a DSTAR radio, it's a reflector. If it's a Yaesu radio, it's a room. And if it's DMR P25, it's a talk group. They all mean the same thing. So you could hear somebody say room, reflector, talk group, referring to the same property of the digital voice mode.
And if you're talking to me and you use talk group for any of these, I'll be okay with that.
Yeah.
I'll be fine.
Yeah. There are some people out there who would browbeat you for slipping up and saying the wrong thing, but I mean, they all mean the same thing. Yes, sir.
On TGIF, they have, you go to their talk groups, they have one called the East Coast Reflector. It's almost like a double.
Absolutely.
And it's so, I don't even know what they're talking about.
So in that context, the reflector is like the server that you're talking to.
Yeah, I think, and they're probably saying that East Coast Reflector, they probably call it that because they've linked a bunch of other groups together. Because some of these talk groups, if you will, they've backwards engineered them so you can have a DMR radio and still talk to a Yaesu radio. It's crazy, but that's probably what they mean.
There's another thing where you go to like a talk group called Fireside Chat, and you're getting like these nets that you don't even know where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And there's no way to you can't figure out, there's no way to figure out what's going on. It's bizarre.
Yeah, I've never actually used TGIF. I know that it's pretty popular. I've always done Brandmeister, so I don't know if they have like a hose line, is what Brandmeister calls it. But Brandmeister has a hose line where you can go onto their website, look at literally every talk group, and listen to who's talking and what talk group. So,
Yeah, it's like HF. There's so many different properties of HF that to me and PJ could be confusing. It's just like it's the same thing. There's so many different terms that depend on what mode you're using, what they mean. It is confusing, and I'd be lying to you if I said I understood it all, because I don't.
yeah.
It just takes, it's like anything else. The more you do it, the more familiar you get with it. But it can be frustrating with the different terminology for sure. And I made it dance a little bit. So
I love that.
So we all know it means the same thing.
Wake up, guys.
Ooh, the best part.
It's my good one.
All right, PJ, let's roll.
TJ, man, I hate digital radio because I gotta have an internet connection, and you know the government is always watching everything I do. So I don't want to talk on digital.
False.
What? No way.
All digital modes, regardless of Yaesu, Kenwood, ICOM, whatever, they are all capable of operating in both repeater to radio to repeater, or simplex environment. So I can pick up a Yaesu radio and talk to PJ in the parking lot, or I can talk to PJ when he's in Japan. It depends on how you configure it.
So if you get nothing out of this, you don't need the internet to work.
That's right.
Touche.
That's exactly right.
But I saw a video where you have to connect your DMR radio through an RJ45 adapter to your router.
Don't confuse people, Micah.
Micah, come on.
PJ, I hate digital because it's so complicated.
Well, anything's complicated if you've never done it before. I'm still complicated by HF, and you guys can blow me out of the water with HF terms all day. I've got a dipole in my yard. I don't even know what a dipole is. So it's not complicated if you get into it and you start playing with it. And don't let that scare you. If it wasn't for Yogi, I wouldn't be into HF. He sold me a radio, and I started playing with that thing, and then I decided to get my general license. So I owe it to my Elmer. I owe it to my Elmer over there. So, but yeah, I didn't know anything about HF. I didn't want anything to do with it. And then I just picked up an HF radio, started playing, and I learned enough to get on the air. So, TJ, I really don't like Star Wars. You know this. And I've heard those digital voice, man. It sounds like R2-D2, and like, I don't know. I'm just not into that, dude.
Well, only in extremely weak signal environments do they sound like R2-D2. Generally, digital's audio quality is superior to its analog counterpart in a weak signal environment or the same RF conditions. Unless, of course, you're standing right below an analog repeater with your handheld or within a mile or two. Digital's going to sound clear without contaminants, I guess is the right word. So there's certainly something to be said for analog. It's the lowest common denominator that every radio can talk on, so it's a great mode as well. But comparing analog in a moderate to weak signal environment to digital, it's very obvious that digital is easier to understand. If you like digital, how it sounds, or you don't like it, that's subjective. But it's certainly easier to read and easier to understand in a weak signal environment. But PJ, back in my day.
Well, we do have some folks that don't like to try new stuff, and that's okay. But don't discourage other people from doing it, right? If it's not your thing, it's not your thing. If you didn't do it like that back when you first started ham radio, it doesn't mean you should discourage other folks from trying a new facet of the hobby.
And like we mentioned, it doesn't require the internet, and it's using the same frequencies, the same everything as analog, sideband, whatever you want to use. So it is, well, sure, HF, you're actually talking from your antenna to the other person's antenna on the other side of the ocean, which is just insanity. And you're using the internet with digital, fair, right? But in the sense of it's not real radio, that's false because it's actually using RF. PJ, digital's going to replace analog.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that a lot of you young whippersnappers are trying to take my analog away, and I don't appreciate that. And so I don't want to touch it because one day they're just going to take it from us, and there's never, ever going to be digital. But you know what? I don't think that's true, TJ.
It's not.
And you know why it's not true?
Because analog works on every radio.
What's the common denominator on all these radios?
Analog. So while digital voice is cool, as we've touched on a couple of times, it's not a lot of population on some of these systems.
Yep.
Now, of course, when you go to a worldwide room reflector talk group or North America room reflector talk group, you're more likely to run into more people. But at a local level, right, like the Richmond talk group on DMR, not nearly as active as the analog repeaters in town. Even just pick just one repeater, the activity, it doesn't match it. So
never.
And the reason for that is you're siloing parts of, you're siloed to DMR. So you don't have, if PJ only has a DSTAR radio and I only have a DMR radio, we can't talk to each other, right? And so if we have an analog repeater that's nearby, we're more likely to use that. And if we call out, we're more likely to hear somebody on that. So they're analog, I think, will always have a place in amateur radio, and I don't foresee digital replacing analog in any sense of the imagination for a long time, if ever.
Nor do I think anybody's trying to do that either.
No,
I don't think anybody's trying to make that change. And like TJ said, me and him talk all the time on the 511, and who knows what flavor of the day radio I'm using, right? But we're still talking to each other. So it is always going to be the common denominator.
And last but not least, the rumor that you need a computer for digital modes. Not necessarily. So for amateur focused modes like System Fusion or DSTAR, you can turn the radio on, put your call sign in it, and get off to the races immediately. Modes like DMR, radios that use DMR, P25, it just depends on the radio, depends on how it's configured. You got to remember DMR and P25 were created so I can throw a code plug that says channel 1, channel 2, channel 3 and give it to Joe Blow, who doesn't know anything about radios, and he can operate it, right? So these radios were not designed for us to be able to punch in every last little detail on the front panel. Now, most of them can do that, or a lot of them can. It just depends on how it's configured. So there is some truth to it. There is some truth, but for System Fusion and DSTAR, you don't. Easiest ways to get started with digital. There we go. So let's go over some cost-effective entry-level portable radios. So for DMR, DSTAR, System Fusion, P25, we've selected a few that are good, what we consider to be entry-level. Nice. Many of you are familiar, like PJ said, with the DM32. $80 or even...
Dang, it's under $100?
Yeah, even cheaper, I think. Yeah, they're running deals.
Wow.
Yeah.
I got to get 6 of them.
Yeah. I've been surprised with the positive feedback out of these. For a Baofeng, I expected it to have a lot of flaws, and it doesn't seem like it has very many. So.
And it's getting people on digital. Will.
Exactly.
Will, I'm looking at you. Hey, we're a step closer than last year.
Not with that attitude.
I think Baofeng has come up over the years, making a lot better product now.
Yeah, for sure. Now, the form factor of this looks eerily similar to this radio, which is its Motorola counterpart. So
I should talk to somebody about that.
Yeah, there was some influence in I believe that might be why it started taking off a little bit. But anyway, $80. You can't argue with $80, and a lot of the time, like folks were saying, you can find it for $56, $60 on Amazon.
It's awesome.
There's no reason not to buy it if you want to get into DMR.
That's awesome.
Now DSTAR, $550. Not my flavor of digital that I like, but hey, that is a great radio though, because like PJ mentioned, the GPS function and everything, you can dial in what the closest repeaters to you are, and then when you're talking on DSTAR, it'll show you how far away the person is from you. That's pretty cool. System Fusion, about $200. These prices are not fixed. Obviously, you can go on eBay and find these for more expensive or less expensive. It just depends on the market. But the FT70DR does Fusion, and it's a good entry-level portable. And then for P25, I always recommend the XTS 5000 to people. $200 is the neighborhood where it lives, depending on the band and the features that are in it. Some of them can be, depending on the seller, closer to $600 or $700, and some of them can be as low as like $100. It really just depends. But 200 is about the average, depending on what comes with it and everything.
For right now, which band for around here would you recommend?
UHF is where most of the activity is going to end up being. So for the XTSs, they come in 2 splits of UHF for some reason. So it comes in the 450 to 520, which there's no amateur allocation in that split. So you want the 380 to 470 split. That way you can have GMRS and ham in that radio. So yeah, any questions? I think that's it's the end.
Yeah, so mention that the XTS will not do DMR.
Correct. Yeah, the XTS is strictly P25 and analog. It won't do DMR, so you'll be a little bit limited for now on local connectivity. But yeah, so you'd probably want to make sure you have a hotspot if you were going to get an XTS or any P25 radio, so you can attempt to make contact with somebody. And I do host a hotspot. Love for you all to use it. I pay like $5 a month for it. So please use it.
So yeah, any questions about anything digital voice? If it wasn't covered in here, we'd be happy to answer any questions. All right, sweet. Well, we appreciate you all listening to us ramble on, and hopefully we left you with more questions than answers, which is always the goal of amateur radio. If you get more questions than answers, that means you learned something. So, yes, sir.
Did you just give us the bird?
Yeah, I sure did. Hold on, I'll do it again for you. Hang on. There you go. In reverse. And one more time. So yeah, we've got a Discord server, which is like a little chat room that's online. It does text chat, and somebody just joined. Yeah, so you can scan that QR code, join the server. It's real active. It's not uncommon to have several hundred messages across all of the different groups each day. Mike is sending messages. So anyway, feel free to join that. We have voice chats every so often. It's really good. There's a lot of great information being passed along in that group.
We used to rag chew a lot in there. Yeah. We don't do it as much as far as on the voice chats, but we did pick one up last week, which was fun. We had about 5 of us in there. So
yeah,
jump out, say hello.
For sure.
TJ, you want to mention the Codeplug plug you put on the website?
Yes, thank you, Will. That actually leads me. I'm going to mute this. So thank you. Appreciate that. It was all PJ. So on the website, there's a couple ways you can get to it. I think I still have it on the homepage here. Maybe not. So you can go to ClubHub on the website, and you don't have to be logged in. You don't have to be a member. You can go to Codeplug repository, and there are several code plugs. There's 2 for the DM32, which is a very popular radio, as we talked about. Alan was so kind as to submit this to us. You can go and download the code plug and just change your radio ID and write it to your radio, and you'll be off to the races. The one from Alan has a ton of channels in it. The Richmond area one Doug made, that is more localized. And then Paul was kind enough to submit a contact list for Virginia. So you can load this into your radio, and like a Kenwood, ICOM, or Yaesu radio, it will show you the call sign and general location of the person you're talking to, which is pretty cool. If you just go to the website, so HVARC.org, HVARC.org, and then you click at the top, you click ClubHub. Of course, the internet is so slow right now.
Hey man, that's a cool radio.
ORG. Yeah, well anyway, it'll be right at the top, you just hit.
Now, I don't believe you showed me.
But yeah, so I think that's it. Anybody have any questions about website, the presentation, the club? Yeah, that's it. Feel free to stick around for a little bit, hang out.
If anybody hasn't done signing sheet, it's up here. If Excited, first name, X5 there.
Do I have anything for sale or make mention? Yes, sir.
Oh, don't forget the 6-meter tailgate.
Saturday.
Yep, 6-meter tailgates on Saturday at Asher Memorial Church.
Have more Baptist on Dunbar, 8 to 12. It'll be a good time.
Yes, sir.
I got something
Real
to say.
quick,
Hey, hang on.
because this was initially going to be the HF portable, I brought in my particular battery box and charger combination, in case someone wanted to get an idea. It's like 25 pounds, it wouldn't be good for a summit,
Right.
but as a park or just a, carry around in the truck kind of thing. 100 amp LiPo battery, case off of Amazon, 20 amp charger, 20 watt charger, and I use this as my home power supply for my radio.
Oh, nice.
Okay, yeah, good.
So if anyone wants to see it, poke at it, look into it.
Any other show or tell?
I'm sorry, other show and tell.
What's up, Russ?
I've got a brand new Yaesu FT D510 DASP dual band. It's a brand new top of the line Yaesu mobile radio. It does digital mode, analog mode, it's got GPS built into it. APRS. It belonged to a silent key down in Texas, and he'd never even taken it out of the box. I put power pole connectors on it, put my call sign in, and measured the power, and I'm just trying to find somebody to buy it. The guy was a hoarder in the end, and we managed to salvage this thing out from underneath a desk somewhere. Otherwise, it would have gone in the trash. So,
How much you want for it?
I talked to HRO. They said I should be able to get $550 for it. It's a $725 list, and they're selling it for $679, $650.
680 right now.
680.
I was looking at it this morning.
Yeah.
Hey.
Like I said, it's brand new in the box.
At the,
Cash talks, baby.
FTM, 510.
That's the 510 DRAST.
Yeah, that's what I got. It's a very nice radio.
And will.
Anybody else have anything?
I would take it to the tailgate, so
Okay.
we'll hopefully find a home for it.
Yes, sir.
Do we not have a buy-sell section on the website?
We do.
It is called EBOB. And after that,
eBOB.
So, same deal, go to ClubHub, right there, it's Bob's picture, and it says eBob.
eBOB, okay.
He was on the link over
He's on the sell
There's also one on the Discord they use.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, also on the Discord, we have a buy, sell kind of deal.
Excellent.
Yes, sir.
As a new member, are you gonna email me the password for,
Yeah, so if you go, let me open a new tab here. So if you go and click on the login button, it'll take a moment because the internet's slow here. You can hit sign up. And then if you have a Google account, you can sign up with Google or with your email. And then it'll send me a notification within 24 hours. So I'll provision it and you'll get a notification.
Anything else? All right, meeting adjourned. Say again?
Motion to adjourn?
You know where they run from. Thanks for coming and joining us tonight, and hope you all had something out of our presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're done.
Yeah, you can pull it out of the case there. It's a work radio.
Yes,